Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. For the first time in approaching a decade, the real OpTic will field the roster without Scump on it. Dashy, Huke, Shotzzy and iLLeY is going to be their team going into the rest of the Major 2 qualifiers. How will they perform? Shotzzy's got some interesting insights into whether any bad blood is being retained, and on the Rambo versus Dashy side, saying there is some interesting piece of information that he's not yet allowed to leak. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. So I mean, look, there's so many great Scump clips, so we've got to share at least a few of them over the coming days and weeks, I suppose. I'm sure we're going to be seeing many more of things like this, and hopefully many more of this type of stuff in real life nowadays, because Scump having not competing anymore, he mentioned, right, that the amount it takes out of you to compete at this type of level in Call of Duty and also make content, do the things you want to do, is basically impossible for him nowadays, and pretty much for anyone nowadays to come up with. So I'm sure we're going to get some great Scump content coming out, and I'm certainly looking forward to him getting involved in some bigger and better things. Even this from Clayster, right, damn man, he says, I'm feeling real old right now. So yeah, Clay, Slasher, some of the real OGs that are still remaining. And I thought this is hilarious. I promised I'd talk to you guys about this morning when Nameless says at Clayster, and of course here comes the Grim Reaper, right, on the last few doors. And this response from Clay I thought was fantastic. Your door is about a dozen to the left, way off the screen. Right, basically saying that Nameless just got cut from the scene ages ago. And you know, okay, look, Clay might be next in terms of the OGs that are forced into retirement, but at least he's you know, the last surviving, which is honestly kind of impressive to think about, right? That you know, the entire OpTic dynasty retired before Clay did, which is impressive for Clay, and hopefully he can go one more year, right? Because there's no guarantee that he retires after this year. He's obviously still got the passion. You can tell it in Clayster's face and his attitude and the way he reacts, especially on LAN. Like I think Clay would go at least one more year if he can, depending on how competitive Vegas are, depending even if another team wants an upgrade, right, in terms of an AR, and brings in Clay because he's been competing at a very high level lately. So yeah, I just thought that was hilarious from Clay, to be honest, and well deserving. And yes, of course, indeed, no doubt, right? There were some teams yesterday that were meant to scrimmage up against the OpTic team, therefore that fell through, didn't happen any longer. And even Sasha says, you know, mate, what if you just join the lobby so we can start this scrim, stop reminiscing about Scump, we've got to get some practice in here. And in fairness, Seattle are one of the teams that does need some practice, but look, there were some rumours. The video I was going to do for you guys last night before the Scump news broke was the possibility of Dashy to Seattle, whether that was a realistic chance, whether the idea of Dashy, Pred and Sid would be absolutely absurd, no matter who they brought in as their fourth in that situation. But of course, that is not going to be the case, at least for now. And it does raise some very interesting questions as to what happens at the end of this season. Will Dashy get dropped? Will he complete the hat-trick of getting dropped for the third time in a matter of months? Or is there a possibility of Pred not actually joining OpTic? Like, you know, with Scump already gone, they've got a team there that arguably, at least for some Dallas Empire fans, might have been one of the dream teams of Call of Duty a couple of years ago. And as it stands, they could be very good, but there is still obviously some concerns. And Cammy even says, basically pointing fingers at Infinity Ward, that have forced himself into retirement in 2019, or 2020 it was, but in Modern Warfare 2019, and then forced Scump into retirement this year because the games just aren't getting so good. Really couldn't just keep red dots on the minimap, right, and add a dead silence as a perk, because Infinity Ward, maybe they'd have kept Scump around a little bit longer if they had done exactly that. So, you know, kind of funny. It's also sad that Infinity Ward in 2 straight titles have, you know, taken away a couple of the GOATs, but, you know, it's not exactly a massive surprise at this point. So this is the roster going forward, and so far, since the announcement, we haven't really had a good chance to discuss what this roster is going to be like, how might they perform, but here we go. So this is a crazy team to think about, really. Dashy is back in the team. I mean, I can't believe my eyes. Like, OpTic is just an absolute fever dream, I'm telling you. So we've got Shotzzy, iLLeY, Huke is obviously here now, and then Dashy is back. So we believe that iLLeY is going to be back on the flex effectively. Dashy's going to be the main, which, you know, it's interesting to me. I think it makes sense given those two players being back on the team together. But nonetheless, I thought it would be quite nice to see, like, iLLeY was doing pretty well on the main. I thought, you know, maybe Dashy does need to step into that flex role, but there is quite a lot of 3 SMG action coming out lately, certainly from Scump even in their past matchup, which, you know, Scump on the flex just made so much sense. It's a shame it's not going to be happening to me. But, you know, effectively this team is the previous team, but with no Scump and with Huke there instead, which obviously on paper is a big downgrade. At the same time, the pacing is maybe better from the SMG line. They they lose some of the firepower that Scump was bringing them, I believe. But, you know, obviously this is what they're going to go for. Whether it's going to work out, I think the big question to me about that one is the Dashy question. We know that Huke, Shotzzy, and iLLeY are going to be a great trio. They worked well with Scump a couple of days ago. Their search and destroy needs to improve, but it's the Dashy piece that's a bit of a question here, right? Because while they've got the experience as a kind of a quartet, or at least as duos within the quartet, the Dashy Rambo thing is a massive question mark that still has to be answered. Now, Shotzzy actually made a video on this, where he talked about it on stream last night, discussing this possibility, saying the team is looking very good, they're grinding hard. They, you know, with Scump retiring, not exactly the pressure is off, because the pressure is certainly on a guy like Dashy to perform after Scump kind of called him out to the video and said, make sure to make the most of this opportunity. But, you know, with Scump gone, some of the weird circumstances around Scump and his retirement and all those questions that were lingering, they are now gone, and the team could just focus fully on being the best version they can possibly be. But Shotzzy said just like a couple of days ago now that Rambo's looking to change his style in terms of coaching to presumably suit Dashy returning. Or is there something else going on? Because he says here in the video there's some interesting information that he can't leak yet, presumably on this whole Dashy Rambo thing, but also saying there's no bad blood now, the team's getting on fine, and probably healed a fair bit some of these wounds with Scump retiring.
And for those that are wondering, our team is good. Like, our team's good. There's one thing that I don't want to leak, but yeah. Dashy joined the bullying team. I will say this. Brandon is gross. I will say that. But the team is on the grind. I promise you, you won't disappoint. There's no bad beef with anyone on the team, so don't think like, oh, you know, they're, you know, this team's shocked, blah 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 blah. Dude, we're gentlemen. We gotta, you know, we gotta do this for Seth. We gotta do this for OpTic. We gotta do this for the fans. I truly love you guys. Support Seth and all that good stuff. He's been nothing but an amazing teammate throughout my, you know, the team, the time that I teamed with him. I love him. So you guys better show support. And yeah, man, green wall for life. I love you guys. Yeah.
But it's got to be said, just because Shotzzy says that everything's all sunshine and rainbows and there's no issues there within the camp, we can't pretend to ignore the fact that just a few days ago, Dashy on stream says that the bridges are unbelievably burned. There's no going back. Like, he literally said that less than a week ago. I think what was last Friday. And here we are less than, just like 5 days later, Dashy's back on the team anyway. It's absolutely absurd. So, I mean, look, we know that Rambo and Dashy obviously didn't get on before. Yes, they're Canadian. I'm sure they'll say sorry. They'll hug it out. They'll apologize. And but it doesn't mean it's all going to be good, right? There's no doubt about it. So is there something else happening here? We know that Rambo said that, or at least Shotzzy said that Rambo is going to change up some of the way that he does his coaching to presumably help Dashy be a bit more involved in that team. There's also another weird possibility that is Rambo actually going to be the coach anymore, just because, you know, this thing that Shotzzy said is going to happen, presumably quite a big piece of information that he doesn't want to reveal to anyone. Could Rambo kind of be more of like a general manager type role for this team now? Or, you know, what's the question there? Because OpTic have never really had a general manager. Hex kind of does it, but he's not like super involved in that. Like, the head coach has never really been the GM as well. They kind of just do their own thing. Most of these organizations now, you know, Thieves, Surge, all the other ones, they've got a general manager making some decisions at a higher level. Not all of them do, but most of them do. So, you know, I wonder if there's anything happening there, just because if they want to keep Dashy around for the long term, that was the question, right? Like, do you keep Dashy? Do you keep Rambo? It seemed like it was going to be one or the other. Now they're both still there. So there's going to have to be some compromise here from one side or another, or like the friction's eventually going to return, right? There's no doubt about it. Like, if they're still in the same roles doing the same thing, like, it's only a matter of time until something goes wrong and the call has to be made again to decide to, you know, change things around. But obviously I'm sure they want to do right by Scump as well, at least for the short term. So, you know, they'll probably adapt and try and do their best as much as they can, but it's still no guarantee that this is actually successful. So definitely tweet your thoughts on that in the comments below. As Shotzzy was saying, the team is apparently all good and there's no bad blood, but Shotzzy said that before when initially they dropped Dashy, and then Dashy said less than 24 hours later, they're like, yeah, the bridges are burnt, there's no going back, I don't even consider these guys friends anymore. But obviously that story has changed. So, I mean, look, I think Dashy was in the wrong in part, I think Rambo was in the wrong in part. They'll have to make up and get over it. Maybe Scump could be a bit of a mediator. Whether this works long term though, I'm still not exactly sure. Right? It's got to be said, Shotzzy was considering during the off-season joining FaZe. I don't think he regrets his decision not to be honest. He's of course teaming with a very good roster, but look, if Scump had retired in the off-season, Shotzzy would have gone to FaZe. That was the rumor, that was the discussion, because it was easy for Shotzzy to build a competitive team at FaZe or just join a competitive team at FaZe rather than build an entirely new team from scratch over on OpTic. They do have a very solid squad there on paper. I'm not quite sure it's as good as their theoretical team at the start of the season with Scump. It has its positives, it has its negatives, but I mean, yeah, look, the thing is, you've got to be said, Dashy was dropped in August, Dashy was dropped in January, like, you know, is it only a matter of time until Dashy finds himself out of the team again, or will the team have to choose to a certain respect between Dashy and Rambo? Because I'm just not sure that after what we saw over the last few days, that those wounds can heal, right? I mean, look, we saw it coming into this season. Dashy was dropped, iLLeY was dropped, the question was there, oh, you know, like, you know, it's all healed over, don't worry, guys, there's no issues in the team now, we talked it all out and there's no problems. One bad place and get beaten by Flawed, all of a sudden, Dashy's getting dropped, all this drama with Rambo, airing out all the dirty laundry. It's like, okay, obviously this stuff was hidden under the surface, and yeah, we mentioned it to you guys, right? It was a common opinion in the community that that OpTic team at the start of the season wasn't going to last if they had one bad result, and for understandable reasons, it's now, you know, a similar discussion. And yes, Scump retiring maybe muddies the water and changes people's mindsets a little bit, but nonetheless, the Dashy Rambo thing is still going to be there to an extent, and just by, you know, bringing him back doesn't solve the issues. So either they're going to have to significantly change the way they treat each other and think about things, or there is something else going on that kind of Shotzzy was hinting at, that maybe Rambo moves into a different role, or there's yet another twist in the tail of this story, which I wouldn't put it past OpTic right now, because the last few weeks have been madness, right? Every time you think the OpTic saga comes to an end, there's, you know, there's one more, right? I've got one more in me, whatever that meme is, right? Which is basically what OpTic have done over the last couple of weeks. Now, I mean, look, X, of course, in his typical trolley mood, talking about Scump retiring, Crim being the official GOAT. It's always a bit of a question, this, and it has been over the last several years. Crim and Scump both, I think, kind of passed Karma a couple of years ago in terms of, like, not only accolades, but also impact on the scene, and it's kind of difficult to say. As of recording, I haven't really seen anything from Crim6 about Scump's career, so I'm sure there'll be something that comes out in due course, but nonetheless, I just wanted to mention it. But on the positive side, we've got to say that, look, the watch parties that Scump will bring could be out of control. The fact that we're back on Twitch now, I mean, I said it going into the season that, you know, for next year, they certainly want to be on Twitch to ensure they can do the watch parties. They've got there rather quicker than they potentially would have done otherwise, and, I mean, look, it's obviously a positive sign in some senses. It's definitely a negative sign for the matches, but, I don't think this is going to be, and I don't think the community really thinks it's going to be as detrimental to the scene as we maybe thought it would be a few years ago. A couple of other statistics as well to mention here from Brian's stats. These are the players who teamed with Scump at the most events. Crazy to think about. Formal, so Scump played 95 events or something. Formal played with him at 51 of those, Crim at 45, Karma then Nature at 23, then Dashy is number 5 on the list, Envoy not far behind, and then you've got to go way back to the OG days with Big Time at 14 events, which is really cool to see as well. Merc, Proofy, Clayster, and even Arcitys at 9 from those Chicago Huntsman days they had, of course. And the thing is, this was quite a surprise to many people, right? Like, obviously, Scump had the announcement video he did, but it's not like OpTic had anything crazy prepared. I'm sure that if Scump was going to retire at the end of the season, OpTic would have probably had, like, this mad documentary ready to go. That obviously wasn't happening. Obviously, the COD League didn't have anything ready to go either. They get some nice infographic here, but of course, it's not quite, you know, not quite fit for a king, let's just say, this infographic compared to what he's achieved in his career. So, you know, I think like they did for Karma, I'm sure there'll be something the COD League are working on to say a proper goodbye to Scump. But I think this is one of the side effects of this absolutely coming out of nowhere. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.